does Zizek, as the champion of the neoliberal leftist movement, understood as the progressive radical leftist movement, mislead us or show us a parallax view through the example of Zizek's claim, which is very attractive to the neoliberal slash anti-neoliberal progressive leftists, which make up some part of his following, although you say his core following would regard themselves somehow as radical leftist with some kind of maybe commitments to forms of secularism or forms of so-called atheism. The view that is attractive to a large number of followers of his in both camps is given in his anecdote or in his sort of provocation that it's easier to show the obliteration of all things than it is to show what the right groove that political movement should be trying to get into is. So on a so I think this is like a superego position. So Zizek's playing the role of the superego or censor of reality in this, and there's a lot of people that want to have reality censored in exactly that fashion. So I understand the superego in the sense that if say somebody is to have a dream where they dream of a cartoon figure or something with hitting them with a ruler or something like that, and then somehow the dream interpretation would say, well, this cartoon figure, think of the name of this cartoon figure, that's actually your mother, and the ruler is a phallus, and so on. And then you ask, but if that was what was that dream wanted to say, why didn't it just show the actual people, and why did it, as it were, have this hieroglyphic or censored form of reality, not the direct thing? Why did we have to sift out the interpretation of the symbols through some kind of art of dream analysis? So that's what the superego means, this question of why some things are coming to us in a cryptic form and not directly. In a certain sense, we could say all human knowledge seems to have that character because it's never complete, and it's always seems to be just one more cryptic, partial, symbolic piece of knowledge. But in this case, I think it's patently obvious that the claim of the provocation is false. Because, like, for instance, the Star Trek: The Next Generation series most blatantly comes to mind, as which is like 1987, 1994, and it's simply the straightforward view of what's supposedly already happening, so that the kind of the groove principle of future is simply imagined in the television show. This is the groove we're in. It's the most accessible groove, and the way that we get there is through science, the sciences. So this is totally obvious that the sciences are the highest intellectual authority today. Or I would add sort of a caveat and say at least from 1994 back to 87, that was certainly the case. Whether that's still the case, I don't know. But I would say there's no question that Zizek's provocation is false. It's very easy to imagine current politics leading to these kind of visions, and it's very easy to envisage them. And it only means that whatever speeds the plow of technology, of research in the current highest authority, that being quote-unquote science. I say quote-unquote science in order to say there's no real serious way to define it. The definitions that exist are so trivial and stupid that they include also even tying of the shoes, because I can tie my shoe, it works, record that as an experiment, then see if it works again next time, corroborate, and maybe falsify. Maybe sometime I won't be able to tie my shoes under the same conditions. This kind of repeatability notion is so trivial and so stupid it's not even worth dealing with. But if you just look empirically and say the sciences people mean by that what's happening in the universities, not in the universities in toto, but in the universities so far as they produce the things that are generally understood to be the sciences, which is especially clear in the so-called example of the so-called hard sciences. And then many other things are more opaque. Whether or not some forms of psychology genuinely deserve to be called science, for instance. So this is like, on the one side we see that the Heideggerian view of the technological essence, and that in a certain sense science is displaced all earlier teachings, but in a way that's not spelled out, in a way that makes it so that you don't see that science can be understood under this generic notion of religion, which simply means seeking forces out beyond us, something of infinite appeal in some way, forces, laws, the mirror on reality itself. This is a kind of messianism when it's put together with a view, with this groove principle of future that says we're in this groove and it's bringing us to the Star Trek The Next Generation world, or some other picturing of that, and it's been pictured many times. It's not hard to do, as Zizek claims it is. It's not hard at all. It's perfectly clear it's not hard. So is he censoring us from seeing the reality that the technological essence is what we're really talking about through this superego hieroglyphic that claims politics doesn't know which direction it's supposed to be going in? Or is it that there's a parallax because there's a standpoint where people who really believe in the laissez-faire post-Spinoza version, the so-called secularism, straight but directly taken from the notion that you can't, which is already really in Spinoza, if you just project it back and forth, that you can't derive values from the mere extended world, the mere Cartesian real world, which is already, I suppose, obvious in Descartes if you keep projecting backwards this charge of the dead world of statistics and probabilities, as in this Lacan purloined letter account, for instance, versus the world where the symbols somehow deviate from the real of this dead atheist core into the world of politics where it's possible to say we can only imagine the obliteration of the Earth, but we can't imagine the Star Trek world. Is it because from within that vision there's the break at the fact-value distinction is so overwhelming that it forces us to create this fake world, this demi-monde, where what's being where the fat thighs of the burlesque dancer is Zizek, and we're looking at this this dance, and he's saying things that are clearly false, but somehow they are hypnotic because it corresponds to the belief that the values really do have their own domain, and we live there, and that's where politics happens. And then the real, which sense of stricto can't be identified, I don't think, by Zizek with any existing account of science, of what science is. That reality is the measurable, according to some of the old German physicists, or other such statements. He doesn't. I don't think Zizek would ever say that can't be identified with somehow the real of the real, or something along those lines, because he has to include both sides, and so again, for this reason, it's somewhat confused. But I wonder if Zizek himself is aware of this fusion come confusion in his own ego superego complex, which may be, I suppose the way I see it is, because Zizek has a personality which is a strong personality, but which is nonetheless in Jungian terms contained by a stronger one, which would see more. What he's showing is not. It's an aspect that points towards something that would be more quartz crystal, clear, and therefore more a guide for